Hi, I'm Randy Sutter. I am the co-chair of the Senate District 49 Republicans, covering Edina, Bloomington, and a bit of Eden Prairie and Minnetonka. It is my pleasure to have the opportunity to interview Eldon Spencer. Eldon was appointed to the Bloomington City Council in March of this year and is running for re-election to the City Council in District 2 for a full 4-year term. Congratulations first on your appointment.
Thank you.
Would you tell us a little bit about your experience in applying and being selected for that position?
Sure, I'd be glad to, Randy. This actually was the second of two appointments that the council has made to vacancies since the last election. So it probably goes to show that you never know when these opportunities might come. And the first was the at-large position, but then there was the district position, which became disproportionately more attractive to people because it's a smaller area in which to wage your first election attempt. And of course, everybody applying for the appointment knew the same ground rules. You'd have to then run again in November to finish the rest of the term that goes through the end of 2019. And in fact, there might be, as there will be, a primary on August 8th when nobody's expecting a primary. So despite that, at least it's only a quarter of the city rather than the whole city. And so there were 13 applicants. The council narrowed it down to 4 after each of the 13 had a chance to make his or her pitch. And then after kind of grilling each of the 4 of us for a half hour, had a couple rounds of votes, and on the second ballot, after they had whittled it down to 2, chose me to fill that term.
Very good. As you mentioned, you will be facing a primary in August as you have 3 other individuals who come forward as candidates. Have you run for office before?
I did run for office in 2001. I also ran for the city council. We also had a primary, and the primary was on 9/11, 2001, a day that probably is one that is going to be pretty hard to forget as the primary date. And in fact, it created some campaign issues. I immediately challenged my opponent. I said, well, let's just suspend our campaign for a couple of weeks to let people kind of mourn and to bury the dead and then kind of resume the politics as usual. And I think he was somewhat responsive to it. I mean, it did make it harder to cover the ground that I had intended to, but I think it was the right thing to do, and ultimately that means it's what you should do.
Thank you. Yeah, the city of Bloomington is a significant city, a lot of responsibility in running for the city council. And so I think it's important that, and I assume that you have felt it's important to have the experience behind you in terms of running to be ready for the job. Mm-hmm. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the experience that you've had in the planning, the operation, the oversight of the city of Bloomington.
And so when I wasn't appointed to the council, I asked to be considered for the planning commission, which is often considered sort of spring training for the city council. You go through many of some of the most important issues in terms of land use and in terms of some of the fiscal expenditures of the city on the planning commission. And you do what people with my background are good at. You dig out facts. The facts are critical in terms of preparing a record for the city council to act on and ask further questions if they have. And you, of course, make a reported recommendation that they're free to accept or reject. But you kind of get a little sense of both the minds of the individuals who work for the city, as well as, the public interest in various types of issues, or maybe equally importantly, the occasional disinterest in issues that the public ought to be interested in. The nice thing about, people of our political beliefs is that we don't feel that we have to be in government in order to make a difference. There's great service organizations, there's great opportunities usually with our places of worship to go out and affect the community and its individuals and its underprivileged individuals very positively. And I had an opportunity both through my church and also through the Rotary Club that I had helped charter starting in 1995 to go out and work in the Bloomington schools, from everything to the Strive program at Jefferson that helps kids who have been underachievers but are ready to turn their lives around. So, and we teach them how to prepare a resume and how to present themselves with the resume. Everything from that to the accident avoiding class on ice and all that we would run, the certainly fundraisers for local, national, and even international organizations, raking leaves for seniors, all the kinds of things that service organizations can do well, and certainly from a public point of view, very cost effectively in terms of saving the public dollars for programs that might otherwise have to be substituted for those great nonprofit efforts. So it's that kind of involvement, I think, that really helps lay the groundwork for you to meet people.
So Eldon, to reiterate, you have been appointed twice to the Planning Commission and served for a total of 6 years in the Planning Commission. Let me ask you then, at this point, beyond the service work that you've done and the committee work that you've done for the city of Bloomington, what else do you bring to your race and to your service then on the city council?
Sure. Well, I think any candidate's going to bring their entire background and experience, as well as hopefully a few lessons from those education years. And I was trained in a couple of the areas that are not considered the most popular professions, economics and law. And yet I find that having both the economic background to analyze the important fiscal decisions that the city faces in terms of trying to deliver cost-effective and necessary, but not cost ineffectively or unnecessary services. That background is really invaluable. My economics training actually involved the economics of renewable natural resources. But I'm getting a chance to apply that in dealing with our new Sustainability Commission in Bloomington, because what is more sustainable than renewable natural resources? But over the years, I did go leave the academic world to the, I would like to think, more people-oriented world of law, because while people say they hire law firms, they really still hire lawyers, just like they would any other professional. People choose their professionals because they have good judgment in the area that I've entrusted this aspect of my life to them. And whether it's the many small business clients, some of whom have become bigger, some of whom are actually going on to their third generation now in family businesses, that have trusted me to be sure that their organization is run legally, their employment contracts are appropriate, their other contracts are fair to them, as well as principled in dealing with others, or some of the larger corporations that handle me to do their local work. They all do so because they hopefully believe I have good judgment, which is what I'm trying to bring to my current council position.
To any of our viewers that might be thinking about going into government work, running for city council, what experience would you recommend that they have that would, in your opinion, make an ideal city council member?
I think an ideal city council member has to be really just engaged in a broad variety of activities within their community. They have to be attentive to their neighbor. My pastor asked me to head a committee that he said we really need an endowment fund so we can guarantee that we have money on the side of our own parish budget to help others in social justice projects and to send our kids off to do mission work that'll be good for them and good for the world. And so we were able to use that committee to meet the challenge that I set for the committee, which is to raise $250,000 in 2 months. And we just hit 253 the other day, and we still have the rest of June. So we're looking forward to that. But in response to your the other aspect of your question, I think you should have a purpose in running for office that kind of matches your own interests, because ultimately you still have to be yourself. What they really want to see is your passion. You often have heard the phrase, well, I don't agree with him on everything, but I like the way he stands for what he believes. And I think ultimately we all have to be ourselves. We have to be able to articulate. We also have to listen, because sometimes we may, want to reform or reshape our views to also match our constituents' needs. But unless you start with bring some kind of passion to it, you might as well forget all the white papers and all the brochures, because people want to see people who clearly believe in the philosophy that they're espousing and aren't just spouting it out.
Well, very good. I've enjoyed having this conversation with you, Eldon, so I'd like to give you the opportunity to, if you have any final thoughts on the race that you're running now. Is there anything we haven't talked about that we should?
Well, I don't think there's a lot of things we haven't talked about, because, the issues that are here today are going to, give way to new issues as the term expands, just as, the world keeps evolving, the city keeps evolving. But I do think it's really important at this time, when there's such discord in governmental institutions and between different bodies in government, to try to find just old-fashioned ways to bring deals together, to be civil, to continue to have discourse with your adversaries. I know when I first ran, my opponent, to his credit, had an issue he was passionate about, transportation, but he also wanted to run a train up and down the east side of Highland Park, which would have 7 times every day cut off, stop the traffic on both Old Shakopee Road on the south end and Highwood and Bush Lake Road on the north end.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't make sense, even if you thought that going from Northfield to Minneapolis by way of Shakopee was a wise route, which most crows disagree with. But smart crows. But in any event, his position evolved, because he realized that while he knew a lot about transportation and professionally was involved in that, that wasn't what the people wanted. So in fact, his position became a lot more like mine, I feel, as the election went along. But that's sort of illustrative, I think, of the need to continue to listen to people, whether it's some of the decisions have already been made in the past. The organized garbage collection is something that we're now finding that there's lots of people's complaints about, but there's ways one can deal with that. When I was working in the Quay administration as Minnesota's consumer utility regulator, sure we tried to keep the rates down by controlling the rate of return on investor-owned utilities, which my economics background helped with, by controlling the unnecessary expenditures of plants that really weren't needed for capacity. Of other wiser decisions were made. But we also had that area of quality of service. And in fact, as a regulated utility, where you were, your investor-owned utility, in that case was, like say NSP, now Xcel Energy, was assigned to you, we had to be particularly attentive in that area, and have ways that customers could come in when their quality of service in terms of blackouts and power outages wasn't working well. I think we're going to have to do the same now in the city of Bloomington, and make sure that if you do end up finding that your waste service providers assigned to you, that they provide the quality of service that they're expected to, even if they didn't have you as a captive audience, or we have to find a systematic way to replace them.
I very much enjoyed this conversation, Eldon. So I thank you very much for participating in this interview, and I wish you great success in your race in District 2, in the primary and in the election in November.
Thank you. Vote on August 8th.
There you go.